My Naughty Little Sister Was Good by Dorothy Edwards, illustrated by Shirley Huggis. Chapter 7 The Baby Angel. When I was a little girl and my sister was a little girl, our dear next door friend, Mrs. Quack Jones, was always washing and dusting and polishing her clean, tidy house. My little sister often went to visit Mrs. Jones when she was doing her work. Sometimes she helped her, and sometimes she just sat and watched. Mr. Quack Jones was always busy too. He painted and sawed and nailed and glued things. He stuck up wallpaper and mended pipes. When he wasn't doing these things, he would go outside and do something new to his garden. He didn't just plant flower and vegetable like our father. Oh no! He made a pretty path with big stone and stuck seashells like fans all along the edges. He put a big stone basin on top of a pipe for the birds to bath in, and he made a garden seat for Mrs. Quack out of twisty branches. My sister used to love watching clever Mr. John at work. One day, Mr. John brought home a big barrel full of rocks and stones. He put all these stones in a heap by his back door. Then he put lots of earth on the heap and planted flower in the earth. My sister said, "Why are you doing that for Mr. Quack?" And Mr. Quack said he was making rockery. He said in the summer, when the flowers were out, it would make a nice bit of color. And when the summer came, Mr. Quack rockery was very beautiful. It was so beautiful that Mother said she would like a rockery too, and Father said he would make one for her next spring. My sister said she would like a rockery as well, but she didn't wait at all. She went down the rubbishy end of our garden and collected lots of bricks and stone and earth and made herself a little rockery right away. My funny little sister made her rockery, but she didn't put flour on it like Mr. Quack did. She looked all over our rubbish heap and found pieces of blue glass and gray glass and broken china with pretty patterns on it, and she stuck them onto her rockery instead. Mr. Quack and my sister rockery was a good idea because it would be pretty all year round. He said his rockery was only pretty when the flowers were out. My little sister smiled a lot then, and kind Mr. Quack said if she wanted any more things for her rockery, she could come and look at his rubbish heap and see if she could find anything. Only mind you don't cut yourself on something sharp, Mr. Quack said, or I'll have Mrs. John after me. My sister found a lot of interesting things for her rockery on the John's rubbish heap. She found pieces of china and glass and pieces of an old bubble pipe. She found one of those diamond-looking, sparkly bottle stopper and one of Mr. Quack's past shells that he had thrown away because she didn't need it. She found half a little crockery dog and a round white china thing with a pretty little china face on it. My sister was very pleased with all these things. She put them on her rockery as well. She put a little half dog on the top and the pretty smelly face thing in front where it smiled and smiled. Everybody said her rockery looked very pretty, even Father, and he didn't often say things like that. Well, now, one day when my sister went to visit Mrs. Quack, she found that dear lady very busy. Mrs. Quack had a very beautiful best front room, and in this room was a big glass cupboard with all Mrs. Quack's very best china in it. When my sister came in, Mrs. Quack was watching all her lovely china from the glass cupboard, and she said if my sister would promise not to touch anything, she could come and stand soapy water and tried it very, very carefully on an old soft tower. She had plates with rose and teapots and vases and little Chinamen and lady with fans and dishes and tiny red drinking glasses. My sister hadn't seen all these things close to before, but she only looked. She didn't touch a thing. When Mrs. Quack was washing a black teapot with yellow daisies on it, she said, "Oh dear, there's something in here." My sister looked to see what was in the teapot, and Mrs. John showed her a wet soapy paper bundle. "Oh dear," said Mrs. Quack, "I've forgotten about the baby angel." And she carefully opened the wet soapy paper. Inside there was a white china baby angel with tiny wing and no clothes on. It was holding a white china basket with white flowers in it. My sister looked hard at the little angel. She said, "Oh, poor, poor angel. It hasn't got a head, and it hadn't." Mrs. Quack said, "All this china came from my old aunties. The little angel was broken. We unpacked it, but Mr. Chance said he would mend it for me." Then she told my sister that Mr. Quack hadn't been able to mend it because the head had disappeared. Mrs. Quack said, "I suppose it must have burned up when Mr. Chan got rid of all the paper the china was wrapped in. It's such a shame. I always loved that little angel when I was a little girl." My sister looked hard at that baby angel, and then she remembered something. She remembered the round china white face with pretty smiling face that she had put on her rockery. She didn't say a word to Mrs. Quack. She slipped off the stool and ran out of the house, through her own little gate, up our garden, straight to her rockery and back again. "Here it is, Mrs. Quack, here it is," my sister said. "Here's the baby angel's head. It was on my rockery." Mrs. Quack was delighted. She ran in to tell Mother about my sister's cleverness in finding the baby angel little head. She told Mr. Chan when he came home, and he got out his sticky glue and stuck it on at once. It looked very pretty when it was mended. Mrs. Quack told the baby angel to show my sister, and my sister showed that it was smiling at the basket of white flower. "You are a good, clever child," Mrs. Quack said. She said that if my sister hadn't been so clever and made such a lovely rockery, she would never have found the angel's head. She said it must have fallen out of the paper when Mr. Quack burned the rubbish many years ago. Mrs. Quack said, "I prized the little angel very much, but she said that when my sister was a lady of 21, she would give her the baby angel for her very own. Wasn't that kind of her? She did too. And if you go to my good grown-up sister's house, you will see the baby angel smiling at his flowers on my sister's mantelpiece." Thank you very much for watching my video. If you like the video, put on a like and a subscribe. That do very much. Thank you.